We are getting ready to start talking a little bit about the accounts receivable portion of QuickBooks. If you're not familiar with that term, anything having to do with customers in your business, that's called accounts receivable. Customers are people or businesses that buy from you. You're typically going to make a sale, and that's going to be income to your business. We need to talk first of all about how the customer list is set up, and then once we do that, we'll go into the second section and I'll show you how to add some customers to this list. The way you're going to get to a list of your customers is to go over to your navigation bar on the left, point to Sales, and then you'll see Customers in the list. At the very top of your customer list here, you can see the dollar amount for any of these categories. You can see that for open invoices, I have $35,810. These are invoices that have been created and the customer has not paid them even if they owe a penny. If you had any of this amount that was overdue, you would see that over here. And overdue means that if you had set specific terms on an invoice, let's say net 30, meaning that invoice was due in 30 days and the customer has not paid you by then some of this moves over into the overdue category. You can also see how much was paid in the last 30 days, in this case nothing. There's also a dollar amount for what we call unbilled activity and for estimates. Sometimes you will get little messages like you see here right above your actual customer list. You can close those with the little X in the right hand corner and then you can actually see the list. The customer list is set up alphabetical by last name. You'll notice that when you look down this list, the list is set up by last name, comma, first name. You'll want to do that because it's a lot easier to find someone when you're looking for them if it's set up that way. Obviously, a business like Adam's Candy Shop would not have a last name and a first name, so it just sorts the first letter, which is A in this case, with the A's in the list. If you see a little envelope to the right of some of your customers, that means that if you click there, you can actually send that customer an email. If their email address was set up when you actually set up the customer, then it would pull it like you see here. If not, you're going to notice that there's no envelope, meaning that you have not put in a customer email address in the customer information. These are what we call sub-customers. Sometimes they're called jobs, sometimes they're called projects. In the online version, the technical term is a sub-customer. They're both sub-customers of, in this case, Mike Ballack. You can also see the customer's phone number and the open balance, meaning how much money that customer owes you. There's also a column for actions. If you happen to be on this screen and you'd like to take one of these actions related to this customer, you could do that. For example, you could go ahead and create a statement or an invoice right from here. Just know that you're not always going to be on this screen when you want to do those things, so there are other ways to do those actions. Notice you can also search for a customer right up here. So if you want to look for Mike Ballack, for example, you can start typing the last few characters of their name and then you'll see that it pops up in the list. Over on the right hand side, you have the ability to print a list of your customers. You can also export this list to Excel if you'd like. And there's also some settings, and I want to click on those for a moment because I want to show you that these are going to be the columns that you see up here. If I'd like to see their email address, I just choose that, and notice now I have a column for email. Or if I'd like to see their address, I can click on that, and now I see their address as well. It's just how do you want to actually look at this list. Another thing I'll mention way back over on the left where it says Batch Actions, if you have multiple customers selected, from the drop-down list, you can actually email all three of these customers, or you can make them inactive. An inactive customer is a customer you've used in the past, therefore you can't delete them, but if you haven't seen them in a long time and you just want to hide them from the list, you can make them inactive. That's a quick overview of the screen itself here. What I'd like to do now is take you over into the second section and show you how to add a customer to the customer list. Now that you've gotten a quick overview of what the customer list looks like and how it works, we need to start adding some customers to this list. Let's go ahead and flip over to QuickBooks and I will show you how to add your first customer. If you're in your customer list, you'll notice in the top right-hand corner there's an option to add a new customer. There's also a down arrow to the right of that because you can also choose to import customers. What if you have a list of customers already set up in Excel? You can just import those so that you don't have to set them up one at a time. We are going to talk about importing customers from Excel over in section 5 of this module. For now, I'm going to click on New Customer. We're going to put in some customer information on this screen, and you'll notice the first thing it asks for is the company name. Remember that a customer can be a company, a customer can also be an individual that works for a company, or it could just be an individual and there's no company. In that case, you wouldn't put anything in the company name field. But I'm going to go ahead and put in this customer's company. It's BRC Supplies. And you'll notice that because I typed a B, it starts pulling down a list of different companies that it's found and their addresses. So if I want to just choose one of these, I could. But since I'm typing this in from scratch, I'm going to go ahead and just click over to the side somewhere, and then I can come back over and finish filling this out. This customer's name is Tom Allen. And notice it now has a display name as Tom Allen. You can change that display name to show as the company name or last name, comma, first name. Display name means the way you see it in the list over here. Remember we talked about the easiest way to find customers is to type it in last name, comma, first name. Just be consistent with however you decide to do it. It's also going to use the display name as the same way it's going to put their name on checks. It looks kind of funny if I write a check to Alan, comma, Tom. I'm going to uncheck the box and then I'm going to put in Tom Allen, and that way that's how his checks will appear when we put his name in there. Over on the right, you see I can type in an email. I'll just say tom@yahoo. You can also put in Tom's phone number, Tom's mobile, fax, other, and website. Also, if this is a sub-customer, I can check the box and choose the customer that he is a sub-customer of. We're actually going to do that over in section 4. Now notice I'm on the address tab, and this is where I'm going to put in the billing address. I'm going to go ahead and say he's at 123, and we're going to say this is Billings Road. This is going to be in the city of Bayshore, California. The state's California, and the zip code is 94326. The country, we'll just say USA. Now you'll notice that the shipping address is the exact same as the billing address. If you don't ship anything, you don't have to worry about that. But if you do, they may want their invoices going to one address and the actual things you're shipping going to a different address. You can uncheck the box and change that information if you need to. I'm going to go ahead and hit save, and let's see if Tom Allen is in the list. He should be in here as Alan, comma, Tom, and he is. You can see it right over here. Now I want to mention a couple of things. When you're in this list, if you have a customer that you accidentally put in, you cannot delete that customer. The online version of QuickBooks lets you make a customer inactive, meaning you hide them from the list, but you cannot delete them. Now what you're going to see is all of the information you had set up about Tom Allen. Notice a couple of things. You can add some notes if you want to this customer's record. I'll just click Add Notes just to show you. Let's just say that we can put in here, this is a new customer for the year 2020. And that's a note. That's all you have to do there, and now that will show up anytime you want to see that. Notice also there is a tab for the transaction list down here, and obviously we have no transactions yet, but as we start creating invoices, receiving payments, that sort of thing, they'll show up right down here. The projects, these are going to be the jobs that we actually do for these customers. There aren't any set up yet here. We can also see customer details. This is where we've got all of the information we had just set up for this customer. And then also if there were any late fees, you would see that listed here as well. And that's how you set up a new customer. I'm going to hit this customers link here in the top left, and that'll take me back to the list of customers. And notice Tom Allen has an envelope to the right because we did put in an email address for Tom Allen. That's pretty much how you put in a new customer. What I want to do now is take you over into section 3, and I'm going to show you how to add a sub-customer. Now that you know how to add a customer, let's talk about how to add sub-customers. A sub-customer is basically going to be a way of adding a level underneath your main customer. If you have different jobs that you work on for a particular customer, you can actually separate those jobs by actually creating sub-customers. Then you can look at reports for the entire customer, but also per sub-customer. In the desktop version of QuickBooks, they actually call these jobs. Sometimes they're called projects. Here, like I said, the terminology is a sub-customer. Let me show you how to set those up. To create a sub-customer, we're still going to use the New Customer button because it is a new customer we're setting up. They're just a sub of another one we already have existing. When this comes up, all you want to do is put in the display name. You can see in their case, they're using street addresses. I'm going to make up one, 124, and this will be Scottsdale Drive. And the only other thing you want to do is come over here where it says is sub-customer, and underneath it, pick the customer that you want to apply this to. You can also see it says bill with parent over on the right, and you do want to keep this together. You can also bill this customer individually. We're going to leave it on bill with parent, and you'll see that it actually pre-populated all of this information from Tom Allen's setup. We don't need to change any of this unless it happens to be different. We're just going to hit save, and then that's going to be our next level we've created. You can see it right over here. And that's all there is to creating a sub-customer. Now, a couple things you need to know. If you're using the sub-customer feature, you want to use it consistently throughout QuickBooks. If you don't, let's say that you're working on some transaction, and instead of picking 124 Scottsdale, I picked Tom Allen. It's still going to go to the right main customer, but on reports you'll see other, and you'll go, what's going on? You want to make sure that you put it to the correct sub-customer if you're using the sub-customers option. Not every business will use the sub-customer option, but it's really great if you need to break out different projects, like I said, or maybe you have different locations for a particular customer, things like that. That's really all there is to working with sub-customers. Let's go ahead now and move over into section 4, and I will show you how to edit an existing customer. Once you have a few customers set up, you're going to realize that you need to edit some of the information. Maybe you actually set up the information wrong, or it could be that the customer information has changed. Maybe they've moved, they have a new address, you want to add a website. You can always go in and edit the information about your customers, and it's a pretty easy process, so let me show you how that works. If you want to edit a customer's information, make sure you click on your customer over on the customer list, and then come over here and choose this edit option. Let's say that Tom's email really includes his last name. I'm going to go ahead and add Allen. And let's say that when we set this up, we did not look at any of these tabs. So let's go through those real quick so that you'll know what other types of information you might want to set up when you're setting up your customers. We've looked at the address tab. Now let's take a peek at notes. This is where you can add any notes you would like pertaining to this customer. The best thing to do is just drop down after the previous note, pop in the date, and then pop in any notes that you might have pertaining to this particular customer. The third tab over says tax info. This has to do with collecting sales tax from your customer. If you sell physical items and you charge sales tax, you need to tell QuickBooks that this customer is taxable and what the default tax code is. We're going to talk about sales tax later on, but just to give you a heads up, what you're going to have to do is where you're setting up the items or the different things you sell, they actually call them products and services in here. Then what's going to happen is you're going to set up each sales tax you need to collect, and then you'll group them together to create one big tax so that you're charging the customer correctly. And that's where you would put that tax code. Let's say that it happens to be the San Domingo. We'll choose that. And now what will happen is when we invoice a customer, it'll pull that tax code automatically. The next one is payment and billing. A lot of this is just information for you. First of all, the preferred payment method. Does this customer usually like to pay you with cash, check, barter, MasterCard? You can kind of see the list there. If you need to add a new way that the customer can pay, maybe PayPal, Square, you can just hit Add New right here. And then you can actually type in the name of that new payment method and then hit Save. And now PayPal will be on the list since I just added it. It does not mean that the customer pays you with PayPal every time. It just means that's their preferred way they typically like to pay you. Preferred delivery method. How do they like to have their invoices sent to them? Do they like to have them printed and you can print them later? Or do they like to have them sent via email where you can send those later? Or do they not have a preference? Terms. You can have different due date terms per customer. If you have a really good customer, you might have net 30. If you have a customer that's brand new, you might say due upon receipt. Now let me tell you why you have this opening balance field here. As of the start date of your company file, how much money did this customer owe you? Let's just say it was $1,000. You could plug that in there and the accounting would be correct. But you would not have a way to go back and see that that was actually 3 separate invoices you sent them that total $1,000. I like to go back and put each invoice in that the customer still owed me for and not fill this in. But whichever way works for you would be fine as long as the numbers come out correctly. And then of course if you did put in opening balance, you would put in the date that would be as of, which would really be the start date of your company file. The next tab over says language. This will default to English, but if you'd like to send your invoices to the customer in French, Spanish, Italian, you can see the list there. You can also have attachments for this customer. What this would be is, let's say that you had some sort of file that you actually created, or it could be a bill that you received, something related to this customer. Instead of having to get out of QuickBooks and search your computer for that file, you'll be able to open it right here from QuickBooks because it will be attached. If I click on attachments here, it will allow me to search my computer and find that file and attach it here. The last tab says additional info. You might have different ways you like to categorize your customers. You'll notice they have commercial customers and residential customers, but you can set up this list any way you like it. And that's going to be how those tabs work right there. All you have to do when you've changed all the information is hit save, and that information is now saved in QuickBooks. Now, one quick thing I want to mention to you, especially about sales tax. If you have a customer you have set up where you charge a certain tax and later you go back and edit the information and change it, it's not going to go back to any prior invoices and change that sales tax. It's only for any new ones you create from this point forward. Well, that's how you're going to edit your customers. Let's go ahead now and move over into section 5, and I'll talk to you a little bit about making customers inactive. One of the things you can do in QuickBooks is with any list you're working in, whether it be customers, chart of accounts, vendors, it doesn't matter. If you have an item on that list that you'd like to temporarily hide from the list, you can make it inactive. Inactive customers actually will not show up when you're working in other areas of QuickBooks, but if you wanted to actually turn them back on, you could go and activate them again. Let me go ahead and show you how to make a customer inactive, and then you'll know how to do it when you're working in other lists in QuickBooks as well. Let's say that I want to make Edward Blackwell inactive. Notice that Edward still owes me $1,125. I wouldn't want to make him inactive because I'm going to be using this customer. He's going to make a payment and I'll need to be able to apply money. Typically, you make a customer inactive if you haven't seen them for a while, or maybe it was someone you set up and you never used. Those would be reasons to make a customer inactive. Let me show you what happens if you try to make Mr. Blackwell inactive and he still owes you money. I'm going to go ahead and click on Edit. And here's where you go to make a customer inactive. Now this message is telling me that Edward still owes me money. he has a non-zero balance. If I say yes and make him inactive, then QuickBooks will create an adjusting entry so that he doesn't owe me money anymore. I'm going to click yes, and notice there's a little error message, and that's because this customer has what's called a recurring template that's being used. Anytime you have something recurring, you have to actually delete the recurrence of that, whatever it is, before you can go in and delete the customer in this case. I'm going to go ahead and hit cancel at the bottom, and let's use a different customer, Tom Allen, because he doesn't owe us any money. We just set him up. I'm going to go ahead and click on Tom Allen and then click edit on the right, make inactive. And now it tells me that Tom has sub-customers or projects. Making him inactive will also make all his sub-customers and projects inactive, and that's what you want. I'm going to click yes. And now you'll notice it says Tom Allen is deleted. Just a little FYI, QuickBooks does not have a feature to delete anything from a list, in this case a customer. If you wanted to quote delete them, you'd have to make them inactive, and they're still not really deleted because they show up in the list. They're just hidden, so you can always activate them again. Now if you notice over here it says make active. That's how I would go back and activate my customer again. I'm going to click make active, and now you'll see over here it does not say deleted, but notice the sub-customer does. You'll want to repeat that process with your sub-customer. Select them from the left and make them active. And that's a quick overview of how to make your customers inactive. Well, let's move on. We've got one more thing to cover in this particular module. I want to talk to you in section 6 about importing an existing list of customers that you might already have into QuickBooks. The last thing I want to talk to you about in Module 4 is how to import your customers into QuickBooks. You might already have a list of your customers in Excel, for example, or in a CSV file, and it'd be really nice to be able just to import them into QuickBooks instead of having to enter them one at a time. You will need to set them up a certain way. I want to go ahead and pull up the Excel file that I have so you can see how it's set up. And even if you don't have the fields the exact same, you can map them once you go through this import process. But let me go ahead and pull up the Excel file and show it to you, and then I'll pull up QuickBooks and we'll go through and import those customers. Here I have a list of 3 customers I'd like to pull in from this Excel spreadsheet into QuickBooks. And you'll notice that I've got them set up by name, company name, email, phone. You can see the list here. Those are the names of the fields that are in QuickBooks that you want to pull the information into. If you can set it up this way, that's the best way to do it, but you can also map the fields if you want once you get inside QuickBooks. But I wanted you to see this so that you would know exactly how to set it up. And make sure you save it somewhere that you can pull it in pretty easily when you go to look for it. Let me go ahead and flip over to QuickBooks and we'll pull in John, Ellen, and Doris. All you need to do is make sure you're in your customer list and go up to the down arrow next to new customer and choose import customers. Here's where you're going to select your Excel or your CSV file that you currently have your customers in. Mine's called customer list, and I'll just choose that, and you can see it brought that file in. Now all I have to do is click next at the bottom. And here I can map my fields to the fields that are in QuickBooks. You'll notice the first column are the names of the QuickBooks fields, and over here will be the names of the fields you had in your file. If the names don't match exactly, like this one says name, but maybe in your Excel spreadsheet this one said first name, for example, then you would choose it from the down arrow. If there's not a match, like company, for example, when I look in my Excel sheet, I did not have one called company, then I'll just say no match and it won't be able to pull anything in. The ones with the check mark that you see are the ones that actually have a match to the QuickBooks fields. It sees the exact same name that it sees over in your Excel spreadsheet in this case. Once you're finished going through that list, you want to go ahead and click next at the bottom. And you'll see that there are 3 customers now that are ready to be imported. If I had a lot of these, I could go in and search for these by filtering and typing in the name of that customer. It's going to be pulling in the ones that have the check mark next to them. I'm going to go ahead and import all 3 of those. I'll just choose import at the bottom. And now you'll see that it's brought in those 3 customers. Let's look first of all for Mr. Stewart. We're going to go down the list here, and you'll notice that here is John Stewart. He was the first one on our list. It has now imported all the information that was in that Excel spreadsheet. Well, that's going to wrap up Module 4, where we've talked a lot about customers. Now that we have our customers in, we can move over to Module 5 and talk about sales transactions using these customers.
If you're not a subscriber, click down below to subscribe so you get notified about similar videos we upload. To get a free QuickBooks Online Essential Keyboard Shortcuts infographic, click over there. And click over there to watch more QuickBooks videos from Simon Says It.